Yes, maybe I have to start again. Hello, everyone, and welcome. It's nice to see you here, whether it's morning, afternoon, or evening where you are. So thank you for making time to be part of this session. I'm Leyla Yalçınkaya, and I am here as a member of the Organization and Management Theory Interest Group of Turkish Academy of Management. Turkish Academy of Management is actually a new association established just 2 years ago. So with the mission of, bringing together the scholars in this field of management and organization, and to foster academic inquiry and knowledge sharing. So today, we are truly honored to have Professor Eero Vaara with us. I'm deeply grateful for this opportunity and would like to extend my sincere thanks to our esteemed guest, Professor Vaara, and our association committee member for making this event possible. So I also want to actually take this moment to thank you, Professor, for your book, actually, that you kindly sent me years ago. It still means a lot. Before we begin, allow me to briefly introduce Professor Eero Vaara. Actually, I'm saying briefly because Eero Vaara is globally recognized scholars with nearly 400 publications, which have received over 26,000 citations according to Google Scholar. So he is professor of Organization and Impact at Said Business School, University, Oxford. So his research interests include strategy, institutional change, discourses, legitimation in the field of the organization and management. So Professor Vaara highlights the role of language, discourses, narrative in shaping the evolution of the strategic and institutional change. So his papers mainly are about the strategy practices, mergers and acquisitions, institutional legitimation. So today, we will be discussing two of Professor Vaara's recently published work. So, Professor, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Leyla, so much for the kind introduction, and I'm so happy it's recorded, so I can play again and again and feel good about about the scholarly career. But more sincerely, I mean, and more importantly, very sincerely, I'm grateful for this opportunity to say a few words about legitimation and discursive legitimation, and it's truly a privilege and pleasure to be part of this seminar series that you have been organizing, knowing that it's really a great bunch of people who have been appearing and presenting their work and triggering discussions about important and interesting themes, and also a great attendance from people not only from Turkey but also other places. So this is truly an honor for me, and I'm really happy about this opportunity because, as you were saying, I've been looking at legitimacy for a long time, especially legitimation, and oftentimes, or increasingly so, from discursive or communicative perspectives. And I think this is important, not least because we're living in a mediatized society where the role of communication is really the key in terms of understanding how legitimacy is being established and contested. But actually today I want to broaden the perspective, not to only look at legitimation, but also stigmatization. So the broader context which I find fascinating and probably more appropriate than a mere focus on legitimation would be to also include social evaluations such as stigmatization. So hence, after some email exchanges, we decided to, offer you two for the price of one. So two papers, one on legitimation and one on stigmatization. So I'm really, really excited about this. And again, I appreciate the setup, where the plan is that, I won't take too much time to provide you an overview of these papers to get the conversation going. Before doing this, however, I want to give you a little bit of background information whilst trying to make the slides available for you guys. Can you see this? Yeah, some nodding, so
Yeah.
that's a good sign. So the work I'm going to present is not only my work, obviously, but this comes from collaboration that I've had, very nice and fruitful collaboration with my good friends Anna Randa, Ellen Echanchu, and Jonne Krait in terms of the latter paper. Jonne also on board. Unfortunately, there's also a tragic aspect to this collaboration because Elene Chanshu, my wonderful friend and co-author, passed away about a year and 4 months ago. So when I'm thinking about this project and the papers, I have mixed feelings in terms of great sadness, in terms of losing Hélène, but also a lot of pride and I guess happiness in the form that we pulled this off in terms of completing the project which with her involved and that would be her view as well, I'm sure, or is her view wherever she is in terms of thinking that it's absolutely great that we can present our joint work. But I just hope that even after this session you would remember Ellen as a key author when it comes to discursive perspectives on legitimation and stigmatization.
Sorry for your loss, Professor.
Yeah, I mean that such is life. So all kinds of things happen. But to the topic, I'll as said, I promise to be relatively brief, which is not easy because it's indeed two papers, and as you know, we work a whole lot on papers, and it usually takes years to publish them. So there's a lot in them. But I want to frame this such that it's not only the two papers although we will be focusing on those, but I want to just for starters say a couple of words about why a discursive perspective. In some ways, this is obvious to me in terms of for a number of years, probably too many years, being excited about social evaluations, especially legitimacy, and then pursuing this discursive perspective. But to really hammer home the point in terms of why this is important, I think we have to start by looking at the basic theories and prevailing views that we have about social evaluations. And I would well, at least in my view, it has become increasingly clear that the world has changed a great deal, and we all know what it's come to in terms of the mediatization of societies and also organizations, making all kinds of communication and thereby social interactions very different from what it was when many of the key theories were still applying were developed. So there's a need to update our understanding of social evaluation dynamics, and that's really a key motive behind these two papers, and maybe even more broadly the work that I've been doing on this front. And of course, it's not only me, it's not only our team, but many others who have perhaps with somewhat different um, perspectives pursued the same goal in terms of trying to figure out what's going on. Uh, so my argument basically, or our argument in the papers is that we need a discursive perspective, or at least it helps to understand the multifaceted and dynamic nature of social evaluations. And it especially helps us to understand where we are now in this world, which I would boldly argue is characterized by a post-truth orientation, meaning that at least for many kinds of issues, it's no longer a question of black and white, but more a question of legitimacy struggles or struggles over stigmatization. So those are the first reasons for why embarking on this journey and basically the motivation behind these two papers. So I'll proceed to the first one. So this is a review paper, and it took some time to pull this off, but I think we started with the right motivation, which was really this understanding on the one hand that there's a whole lot of work actually that deals with legitimacy and adopts a kind of a discursive or communicative or narrative or rhetorical perspective, but it appears fragmented. First of all, because of these different traditions, and I'll go back to these issues in a moment, but also because oftentimes legitimation or discursive legitimation hasn't been the focal point in these analyses. So what we want to do is bring these fragmented perspectives together and offer an integrated framework that would help us to move this work forward. And we are doing this also uh, with the hope that maybe the concept of discursive legitimation would be picked up by others as well as an overarching way of making sense of much of this work. I mean, personally, I don't mind if people don't pick up that concept, but at least it felt to us that there's a need for an umbrella concept as well as a framework and an agenda for future research. So we are following well, our argument basically is that there's a need to pull the different strings together and to try to make sense of these different streams of work to have a more robust basis to pursue in terms of discursive legitimation, and that's what really the review paper is all about. And many of you know very well what the review papers tend to be nowadays. But let me also advertise that this came out in the Journal of Management. So I think there are a few great outlets for review papers, both to read and to submit your own work to them. One is the Academy of Management Annals, but the Journal of Management has run these review issues already for much longer actually than the Academy of Management Annals has existed, and it's a prime outlet for instance your work if you are interested in sending reviews. And also I'm in my own research as well as teaching. I'm oftentimes using the review papers in different areas to help to get a sense of where we are with particular topics or themes or areas of research. So basically, I was already mentioning, and I'll just move on relatively fast here, that there's a bunch of people who have been looking at discursive legitimation or legitimation in general from a rhetorical perspective. And why not? Because obviously communication and legitimation involve arguments, and rhetoric is really the study of arguments. And there are people like Roy Sotheby that has featured in this seminar series who are very well known for their work. There are others such as Sandy Green or Derek Harmon and actually several others who have been pursuing a rhetorical perspective where the focal point has been how different actors try to persuade or convince others in terms of trying to legitimate specific things, whether they are decisions, actions, or other kinds of phenomena that are being discussed. And then, of course, there may be others who are doing the opposite in terms of resisting establishing legitimacy and who may be delegitimating, or if I bring in stigmatization, trying to attach stigma to the same things. So rhetoric provides one alternative, very much overlapping the discursive perspectives, and to come out clean, this is where I come from, especially in terms of critical discourse analysis, or at least critical discourse analysis oriented work, drawing from CDA or critical discourse analysis in particular. And I guess the difference really lies in the fact that if you are pursuing a discursive perspective, that oftentimes, well, rightly so, and obviously so, highlights the role of broader discourses that we're using when, for instance, looking at legitimacy struggles. So in my own work, previous work, for instance, I've been looking at mergers and acquisitions, shutdown decisions, or other kinds of complicated, sometimes controversial things where people are then debating whether this is right or wrong. And in that, just to give you a sense of it, for instance, like shutdown decisions, that is closures of organizations or subsidiaries or factories. They oftentimes look very different depending on what kind of a discourse we're using. So they may be rational business decisions if the framework is of that kind of prioritizing the economic value of decisions, but they may be disastrous events for the local communities or the people involved if the focus is more on the human side or cultural aspects. And then again, let's take, for instance, cross-border acquisitions. They may be or may be of national interest, and thereby, they may look as very good deals or threatening ones, depending on that view. And I was already almost using the term framing. So many people also using framing, which I think in some ways is the easiest one to get. And rhetoric and framing very closely linked. But that's another set of vocabularies in terms of understanding, for instance, framing contests about such things. But then there are others who are looking at narratives. Narratives can be legitimation strategies, but they can also be something more in terms of people studying how the legitimacy of specific, let's say, organizations or industries has been established or maintained or contested through narratives that have been developed, and how they have also evolved and changed over time. And then there are other perspectives. I'm using the term trope here to point out that they're they're micro elements such as metaphors or analogies that may be actually part of the rhetoric, but also people have been looking at these things with a metaphoric focus in mind. So there's a whole load of different kinds of studies, and the review paper is full of them. So if you get excited about these phenomena and examples, you go and read the paper. So what we're trying to do, and now I'm like cutting a lot of corners. So if you have access to the papers, which I hope you do, you'll see that there's a lot of methodological stuff explaining like how we arrived at our framework, and then we go through well, in our way, where we try to systematize and bring together these different streams of research. And this is what we have. I mean, the whole paper is this, basically. There's nothing more and nothing less. This is where it all comes together. And I'm kind of proud about this, especially because it's a lot of my handwriting. On the other hand, I'm sure that it could be more elegant in terms of the shapes, and I don't know how you see the visualization, whether it's beautiful or not, or the aesthetics in that. But the key message is in the boxes, basically. So in the front and center, in the middle part, we have discursive legitimation strategies, and this has been really the focal point, or they have been the focal points in previous research, and that's what our review also tells us. But there's more. There's more. The review also helps us to understand that we shouldn't be only looking at different rhetorical discursive legitimation strategies, but also understand, and that's the box below, what they are, what their foundations in terms of different discourses or ideologies, which are very important, like providing very different perspectives on the focal phenomena. And it doesn't stop there either. It's also important, if we look at the left side of this figure, to look at the positions that actors have from which they speak from. And from a very traditional perspective, I think we're used to, like in rhetoric or discourse analysis, of looking at the positions such as authority, credibility of the key actors. But there's more, and that's at least partly, I guess, captured by some of the arrows in that model, in the sense that these positions are also constructed in these discussions, so discursively constructed, and thereby the strategies and the positions are also interlinked. And there are two more elements which are important. I think the arena one down below is important because we know that the discussions are very different depending on whether they happen, for instance, face to face or in a physical space, or whether it's social media of some kind. And then the box above, or the big one up there, temporality is the final element in terms of our review of different different piece of research. And to be honest, maybe it shouldn't be like that. Maybe temporality is something else, but we couldn't think of a better way of describing that or putting that on the same on the same mapping that on the same figure. So basically, temporality means that, of course, there are many people who have been interested in how legitimation processes unfold over time and what kinds of things move the debates forward. So that's basically the review paper. I just want to finish that off by saying that, like in any good review paper, there's also an agenda for future research in terms of what we should be then doing in terms of filling in the blank spots or building on the key insights of previous research. And the first one is to move on with the new kinds of discursive strategies that, for instance, are less based on what we would expect, like truthful or accurate or fact-based claims, but more building upon other things like emotions or mere repetition of claims. I know that there's a lot that I'm pouring on you guys here, but I hope that if you're interested in this aspect or some other things, you will revisit the paper. But then it's also a question of us arguing that more research should look at the linkages between these positions and strategies and discourses, and definitely I'm of the view, many others share this view, that our traditions and the methods that we're usually employing are kind of constraining in terms of not helping us with the best tools to get into other multimodal aspects such as like visuality, like which is of course so important in terms of people sharing videos or pics of different things. And delegitimation is something that kind of comes with legitimation, but it actually may be different. So we are calling for more research on this, as well as then not only on the sender side or those who are employing legitimation strategies, but also looking at the discursive construction of legitimacy judgments at the audience or receiver end. So that's basically a quick run through of that paper. Shall I, Leyla, just continue with the other one?
Yeah, I think so. Then we will ask for the question.
Yeah. So
Yes,
so
please.
happy to. So in a way, and yeah, we're calling for new methods as well, and that's actually a nice segue to the next paper, because this paper then basically the same bunch of people, except that we also have Jonne Haidt with us. Jonne, who's the expert in topic modeling. So where does this paper come from? This paper comes really from Anna Aranda's great empirical work on the tobacco industry, providing like the starting points in terms of the database that we have, which we then worked upon in different ways in this analysis. And then this realization that actually we want to understand how things develop over time, and perhaps it was a very ambitious goal for starters to try to map out a longitudinal process of stigmatization concerning the tobacco industry. But we want to do this because I'm a firm believer in the longitudinal historical perspectives, as are other people in our research team. But also with this, we had the ambition of like drawing on a huge set of textual material, media material that would arguably reflect the key issues and as well as legitimation. Well, I'm talking about legitimation, I should say, stigmatization strategies used in the debates around the tobacco industry. By the way, I should share a secret here. The paper started as a paper of delegitimation, but the reviewers and the editor made us change it to stigmatization, which I think is true. And there's a big discussion whether stigma and legitimacy are completely separate things or to which extent there's overlap. And it seems to me that there's a lot of overlap in terms of illegitimacy and stigma. but I'm glad that we made this decision to focus on stigmatization because it provided a sharper angle to focus on something that at least we find exciting. So this paper really tries to help us better understand how, maybe I should move to the next page, how industry stigmatization may progress over time, especially when there's a lot of resistance by the incumbents. So that's what we're looking at. So that would be the story of the tobacco industry, and this is basically the research question for us. By the way, if you've glanced at the paper, you can see that it's a very rich paper. It's also a very long paper. So kudos to you if you struggle to read through the whole paper. But still, I guarantee that it wasn't an easy process in terms of trying to squeeze it into what it is, because we were covering so much ground. But I'm happy that we did it, because then I think in some ways, at least, and I'm eager to hear your views later on, in some ways we were able to get an overall sense which is grounded in this empirical material as to how stigmatization moved from one phase to another in this very important industry. So what are we dealing with? We're dealing with the stigmatization of the US tobacco industry. And the key thing, in addition to the theoretical setup, is really this combination of two methods. So why are we doing this? Well, basically because topic modeling offers one way of like capturing essential features or characteristics and even trends in a big data set of basically media text that we're focusing on. So as a person, I'm not the expert on structural topic modeling. So any real questions, difficult questions about that, I will just somehow forward to Jonne. I'm much more familiar with the other method, which arguably I would say is probably even more important in this paper, which is discourse analysis, especially, well, we don't really call it critical discourse analysis, but that's what it is in terms of then focusing on these stigmatization strategies. So basically, I think it's a good idea to combine these two different worlds, two different methods, because the first gives us an overview and the latter allows us to then distinguish, identify and distinguish between different kinds of stigmatization strategies used. And yeah, well, a whole lot of material. This is like bragging that there's a whole lot of articles. Actually, we could have had even more, and there's a lot of supportive material, but it's a whole lot. So in a sense, if I would have tried to, if I had tried to do what I've done in other papers in terms of qualitative reading through and analysis and coding, that would have been a mission impossible, really. So I'm glad that we did the topic modeling part. So um, there's a lot to be said about the analysis that unfolded in steps of like trying out different things and learning, but basically we started with the topic modeling part and then we moved on with the discourse analysis of the stigmatization strategy. So what did we find? When I'm now showing this, it feels like that's obvious, but in some ways, well, maybe it was, but this is really what the topic models also helped us to see or confirm that we have like distinctive phases. So the discussions were not the same; they were different. They evolved over time. So there was a first phase, which was about struggles about harm, basically that tobacco is not good for you. So there were a lot about health issues and discussion about research, etc. The second phase, on top of that, then focused on issues like who's then to blame. Well, basically the tobacco industry, but how this would be both a lot of discussions around lawsuits, successful or not successful, depending on which perspective you take, and then emerging regulation. And then there's a third phase, which was more about the establishing of norms. So discussions around those or struggles around those. Well, maybe it's obvious, but this is what our analysis also helps to substantiate. I'll just give you a couple of picks, just like an overall, and I'll skip the methodology, but basically combining the key topics during this first phase allows us to see like the attention that was focused on establishing harm, like a number of different themes, like debates about different things that all together talk about harm and scientific evidence. So we can see from this figure, I hope you can see that you know that clearly that was important in this first phase, right? So that's the only thing I'm trying to say this with this graph. The second one shows that in the middle, so it's a different time period, it was another set of topics that were more or less about assigning responsibility that were important. Interestingly, it's like a double peak here, like a first peak and second peak. I'll skip that, and we could either see it like two different phases, but because they were both about responsibility, and even though the first one was more about the judicial issues and the second one about regulations, we kind of lumped them together because they're so related. And then the third one, which you can see over here, the final phase was much more about norms. So the discussions about norms were there already before, but we can really see them becoming much more prevalent in the third phase. So none of this is to say that it's clear cut or clean, that the other topics wouldn't have been important during those phases, or that we would be claiming that it started at in 1980 and nothing happened before, or that it ended where we end our observation period and nothing has happened ever since. Those are not our points, but our point is to really try to have a reasonably strong argument about these phases that together, in our view, help us to understand how the stigmatization moves forward. And this is then the key figure. This is the key thing from this paper. Basically, the figure summarizes the three phases that I was mentioning, and there we of course in each phase we could see a whole lot of different kinds of discursive strategies being used by those who were stigmatizers and those who were the targets or the incumbents, basically tobacco industry representatives. And there were many more than what I mapped on this slide, but there were some that were particularly important in these phases, and those are the ones that we zoom in on in the paper. So, for instance, in the first phase, the stigmatizations were trying to reveal or provide revealing evidence about the harm that tobacco smoking or others being exposed to tobacco smoke would, not only the smokers themselves would be exposed to, and they were elaborating on the consequences of tobacco smoke, for instance. And then the incumbents were really questioning those findings that were presented by the stigmatizations, and they were downplaying the points or arguments or the effects as claimed by the stigmatizers. And we have similar kinds of, well, not exactly the same strategies, but different strategies used in an analogous way than in the second and third phase by the stigmatizations in terms of revealing and defaming and elaborating and narrating. Those were the terms that we used to capture those strategies, and then the targets responding by questioning, insulating, or championing. Some of the labels I realize are easier to understand, some of them perhaps a little bit cryptic. This is not on purpose, but in the actual paper, again, there are lots of examples and tables where we basically explain what they are. So what we're saying is that this analysis helps us to see what has been happening in the tobacco industry, which is important per se, but we can also distill a process model where stigmatization proceeds by the first struggles in this case and perhaps in many others about harm, like what's the bad thing that we're focusing on, towards assigning responsibility or blaming the key actors, basically the industry representatives and the companies involved in what they're doing, and then moves forward towards establishing new norms in terms of what should or shouldn't be done. But all of these phases, our data, I think, clearly shows, perhaps it's not surprising, but at least we capture some aspects of that, are characterized by attention focusing on specific types of issues, and then the attention usually peaking and then you know becoming less important. And this happens like time and again in these phases. And then there are these strategies of both constructing stigma used by the stigmatizers, and then the resistance work of the targets, or in this case, the tobacco companies and their representatives. So there's lot more to be said about this, but I'll just finish off with this final slide, kind of saying that, okay, well, we believe that this is useful not only to understand the tobacco industry, but also to understand other cases where obviously the patterns may be somewhat different. But we believe that the three mechanisms are worth well, are important in most contexts, basically. The attention mechanism that we focus on certain kinds of issues in certain phases, and then there's the stigma construction work as well as resistance work, which are both important to be taken into account so that we understand how stigmatization proceeds. And then therefore we're saying that it's rarely a linear process, but oftentimes not so. And we believe that the methodological approach that we are following also serves as an example for others. That is the combination of structural topic modeling and discursive analysis. So that's it. Thank you for listening, and I'll stop here and let's get it going in terms of questions and dialogue.